What's going on, everybody? In this episode of Fit Over 40, I'm interviewing Esther Avant. She is a personal trainer out of San Diego area who has a great online presence. She has a very unique way of approaching fitness, very down to earth, easy to understand, and I think you'll enjoy the interview. Have you ever thought about how you train? Is it intentional or not? Stay tuned.
If you're over 40 and want to be the best version of yourself, Fit Over 40 with Coach Clarence is here to help.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Fit Over 40. I'm your host, Coach Clarence, and today I have a guest, Esther Avant. She is a health industry veteran with over 18 years of experience in fitness, nutrition, and wellness-related roles. She is a certified sports nutritionist. She's a personal trainer, my old job, wellness coach, and she's the owner of EA Coaching, which provides full spectrum health and lifestyle coaching since 2015. Welcome, Esther. Thank you for being on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, so like you, I started as a personal trainer. That was really sort of serendipitous that I had discovered working out in late high school. And actually the movie Office Space is what prompted me to major in exercise science.
What about Office Space? Tell me.
Right? There was a scene in the movie, which now having watched it since, I realize like my memories of it are not super accurate. But my takeaway was there was a scene where the long-haired neighbor that was in Whose Line Is It Anyway with Drew Carey, he said something along the lines of, whatever you would do if you had $1 million is what you should do for a job. And I had just started going to the YMCA and doing the Nautilus circuit after school. And I was like, I guess if I could get paid to work out, that would be cool. And that ultimately led me to Boston University, where I majored in exercise science, became a personal trainer, and things have just sort of evolved from there over the last 20 years, where I'm sure you realize as a personal trainer as well, you got a lot of people who are wanting to lose weight, are wanting to see, physical changes, and you're only in front of them for, an hour or two a week.
Yes.
There's a lot going on outside of those sessions that is impacting their results or lack thereof. So that's what led to my pursuit of nutrition certifications and, a better kind of understanding for myself too. I was consistently exercising and still in this sort of binge and restrict mentality with my own food. So I realized that was a big piece of the puzzle that I didn't have and was holding me back from helping my clients as much as possible. And then once I kind of had those two pillars, what I realized was missing was the actual behavior change component, where you can have all the textbook knowledge in the world. You can understand the science and the muscle actions and how, macronutrients break down. And if you can't actually take that and turn it into something actionable for yourself, for other people, what good is it? So that sort of rounded out what I consider the trifecta. And once I started learning more about how our brains work and why it's so hard to consistently do the things that we know we should be doing, that really kind of put the final piece in place. And now I feel like I can take kind of the formula and help anyone apply it to their lives.
Gotcha. So I talk to a lot of personal trainers and health coaches. So what is your take on what are some mistakes people are making and in nutrition and fitness?
I think one of the biggest mistakes is, well, there's a couple that come to mind. Number one, trying to do too much at once. We just get bombarded with information.
That's life in general.
Right, yes. And we try to do all of it all at once.
Yes.
And that's a big part of why we have these starts and stops, is because you think, if I can't do these 10 things, why am I bothering doing any of them? And around we go. So that's one. And the other, I think, is wanting there to be the answer or a singular right way to do things. And the fear that if we don't know what the right thing is, then we definitely don't want to do the wrong thing and mess it up or end up worse off than we started. And the end result is that we just don't do anything. So we have kind of the opposite ends of the spectrum. Either you're trying to do way too much and probably a lot of stuff that doesn't really matter, or you're doing nothing
Yeah.
And of course, nothing's changing. So I think, if we stopped looking for these secret answers that we think everybody has that we don't, and we just started really consistently applying the basic stuff, we'd be a lot better off. And a lot of people will say, I don't know what to eat. I don't know what to do for exercise. And to an extent, there is obviously education that needs to be involved, but we all have a decent idea of where to start. We can walk more. We can probably lift some heavy stuff. We can stop snacking so much, maybe drink less booze or less soda, have a vegetable or two. Those are all good places to start. And once you've taken action and once you get a little bit of momentum going, it's that much easier to feel like kind of the next step has revealed itself.
Very good. Why do you think weight loss is so difficult to maintain? Everybody's lost weight, gained weight in their journey. Why do you think that's so difficult in your experience?
I think there's a big piece of this that I'm sure some people are talking about, but I don't hear talked about very often, which is just how food centric and sedentary our culture is. It's so hard to maintain our weight loss because we are surrounded by opportunities to eat mostly empty calories,
Mhm.
by opportunities to barely move at all, and by the social norms just
Mhm.
giving into those things. So if the majority of the people are not exercising consistently, aren't going out and taking walks, aren't making an effort to eat, relatively, whole, nutritious foods most of the time, it feels like you're fighting an uphill battle. And I think we all kind of want the answer to be you just need more discipline or you just need to, put your blinders on. And of course, that matters. Like what you do matters a lot, but we can't overlook how much we're affected by our surroundings and how much we're not talking about that. So I think that's underlying why it's so hard and why so many people will be successful for 6 months, a year, a couple of years, and then sort of slowly end up back where they started. It's because all of that outside influence that we haven't really focused on finding a solution for.
And so how do you, in your coaching, how do you approach that? Because that's something that's probably never going to go away. So how do you deal with that?
I think what you said is the first really important thing. It's not going to go away. So we need to figure out ways to deal with it. You can't just bury your head in the sand and say like, well, I'm going to isolate myself. I just won't leave my house and I can eat my perfect meals. And like, that's not going to work. So recognizing the extent to which you can impact this, I think is important. Like, sure, yeah, you can lobby Congress or whatever to change big food, but ultimately, what are the things you can do in your immediate surroundings to make a difference? With how many people are overweight and obese in this country and obese in this country, and how many people are wanting to do something about it, it would probably be a welcome change among your social group if you were the person who said, hey, how would you guys feel about meeting to take a walk instead of doing happy hour? Or I've been hearing about pickleball. Does anybody want to try it with me? Other people are going to be relieved that you're offering an activity that isn't all about food and drinking. So I think that's a piece of it. I think having these conversations and having the awareness to know that when you change how you do things, the people around you are going to be impacted. And often your attempts to be healthier highlight other people's lack thereof. So there's often this sort of unspoken friction where it's not that people don't support you, but if you're saying, actually, I'm going to pass on dessert tonight, you've just highlighted, oh, I always get dessert and I'm never going to lose weight. You've made people more aware of their own behaviors. So I think having these conversations and making an effort to surround yourself with other people who get it and are supportive of or live a similar lifestyle or are aspiring to as well just helps normalize the behavior to know that you're not the only person in the world who's trying to eat more vegetables. And if you start putting yourself out there, maybe you join a running club, maybe you join a local CSA, things like that. There are ways to expose yourself more to people who are living a similar lifestyle. And it doesn't mean like get rid of your old friends or switch your family or anything like that, but more so just broaden your horizons a bit and see what else is out there can really help you feel like, you're not a black sheep. And I think the more we have those conversations and the more we engage in a variety of activities with different people, the easier it gets to maintain our weight loss, regardless of the stuff that's totally out of our hands.
Gotcha. Usually when people see ads to get in shape, especially around the holiday time, in about 5 months, we're going to have the big push for the new year resolutions and all that stuff. And they're on a lot of social media, there's this thing of get this done tomorrow. How do you combat that so you don't have the people who are doing the all or nothing?
Excellent question, because that is what you always run into is I'm just somebody who, if I don't get fast results, then I give up because it's not happening fast enough. Most people say that. Of course, we all want drastic results immediately. And right. And the fact that things like Amazon Prime exist where we can get most things to our doorstep very quickly with very little effort has just kind of skewed how we think about our weight loss, in that we want that to be fast and easy too. So the thing I always bring people back to is the very classic story of the tortoise and the hare, where you need to recognize who you've been so far in that story. And most of us who have those, those all or nothing tendencies are the hare. We make this like really fast spurt of effort when we're doing all the things, and we do see some progress and we feel good about it, except that we can't sustain it. We end up falling off. There we are. And around we go, those starts and stops. So ultimately, it starts with the recognition that what I've been doing isn't working. So either I can continue to do that again and just like kind of hope that things go differently this time, or I can acknowledge, what do I have to lose? If what I'm doing already isn't working, what's worse than that? So I might as well try something that has a chance of working.
Yeah.
And that's the first piece of it is, everybody can relate to the tortoise and the hare and can sort of acknowledge, like, I do see the parallels here. And then it's a matter of learning to celebrate and take pride in your behaviors rather than the outcome that you want down the road. Because what feels so bad is when we're doing all the work and the results are still way far away. So what we want to do is bring the things that make us feel good and make us inspired to continue to the present. So I always recommend keeping some sort of consistency tracker. And I actually have one that I can share at the end if you think your listeners would be interested. Some sort of thing, like a sticker chart, basically, where you can say, these are my goals. I want to take a walk 5 days a week. I want to lift weights 3 days a week. And you actually write down, or you give it a smiley face or whatever each time you do it. And you start to take pride in just doing what you said you would do and showing up when and in the ways that you said you would. And when you're celebrating that, when you're focused on your consistency, the results that you're after become more of an afterthought, and you're focused on what can I do? What is the focus for today? And the results become a byproduct of that. So I think that is really important, that you're not just focused on when I get there, but you're thinking, what progress am I seeing along the way? What can I celebrate now to make this more enjoyable? And I'd say the third thing is in setting realistic goals. So we tend to have really kind of rose-colored glasses about what next week is going to be like. We think it may be that I did one workout this week, but next week, my kids are going to be better behaved. I'm not going to be busy at work. My spouse will be around and be super helpful. I'll definitely be able to, do something 6 days a week next week. Totally overlooking the fact that very mostly next week is going to be a lot like this week. So we need to set goals based in reality.
Yeah.
So look at what have you done the last couple of weeks and set the bar a little bit higher than that so that you actually believe you can do it and you follow through and you get some momentum and you feel good and you want to do a little bit more. So meeting yourself where you are and not letting yourself get away with it's not enough, because what's not enough is having these periods of doing nothing. A little bit done consistently is always going to be more productive than, all or nothing.
Yeah, I love that. We tell our clients, do a little more than you did yesterday. So if you took 10 steps, maybe take 11 or 12.
Exactly.
Don't. I think a lot of people do that. They overwhelm themselves and they have good intentions, but bad direction. So I think like when someone says, all right, I want to lose 50 pounds. So next week I'm going to be in the gym 7 days a week. And it's like, you haven't been in the gym in 6 months. So, now you're talking about you got to be realistic. But I think that's where I think good coaches can really have a good initial conversation with their clients and really set down realistic expectations. Because I tell people all the time, anybody can show you how to do a bench press, how to squat, with decent form, how to put protein carbs together. It's really that real estate between your ears that's running all that. That's the shift, at least for me in my business, was you're dealing with people's minds. These people are adults. They know eating donuts all day is not good. They know drinking, but so why are they doing it? And then the coaches who really elevate their game are the ones who get into why are you doing that? So it's because I remember when I first started, I thought I could train everybody. I was like, I don't care who it is, bring them in, and you do get results because a lot of times you're just making people have healthier lifestyles. They're moving, they're eating less crap, but then it becomes a challenge of how do you sustain it. So what are some things, some gems you give your clients just initially? Because I think people really don't understand how potentially long the process can take to get to a simple goal of, we might think in our head, oh, I need to lose 20 pounds. And it doesn't seem like a lot of weight. But if you have a lot of restrictions and barriers to your lifestyle, you're not sleeping enough, you don't even know how to eat, that 20 pounds could take 6 months. It could take a year for some people. So how do you kind of let people, because a lot of people I know I need to be healthier, but I'm afraid there's so much stuff out there.
Yeah, I think it starts with thinking about the future that you want for yourself and kind of reverse engineering from there. Is most people are so focused on getting to the goal and that they then have this rude awakening once they've reached it, that there's like, oh shoot, now what? I was, kind of white knuckling it through whatever approach I was taking just to get here. I can't do this forever. That sounds miserable. So now what? And that's when you have the revert back to your old habits. So I think starting with, what do I want things to be like once I have reached this goal? Do I want it to feel relatively easy to maintain, or do I want it to feel like a constant struggle? And if I want it to be easy, what are the skills and the tools and the changes that I need to make along the way so that the transition from losing weight to maintaining is really pretty painless? And very often that requires exactly what we were talking about, kind of taking a more gradual approach and settling into the fact that even though the goal will not always be to lose weight, if you want to maintain your health needs to be one of the top values in your life long term. It doesn't mean you're always thinking about it constantly, or it's always, the singular thing that you're focused on, but it's always there near the top, that you never let your health habits slip too far. I think it's important to, I just lost my train of thought. To, like I said, address those kind of gaps in your skill set, where a lot of times clients will come to coaches like us and want the very kind of surface level help. What exercises are going to help with, this here? What foods? I keep hearing about superfoods. Like, what are those and where do I find them? What is the best, how many calories do I need to burn fat? Stuff like that. And ultimately, yes, knowing about calories and energy balance is important, but like you touched on, it's really what's going on between your ears that's so much more important. So it's less the what to do and why have I not been doing it and what needs to change so that I do. And that generally gets into deeper work because, like you said, there's often this kind of underlying fear. And I see it both ways. I think there's fear of being successful and also fear of failing.
Right.
So when either way seems scary, it makes sense that we don't want to change anything. At least I might not be happy here, but at least I'm comfortable. At least it's familiar. So I think there's a lot of kind of mental work and exploration that needs to be done to figure out, how did I get myself to this position in the first place? Because generally our habits have been serving a purpose. We just aren't sure what it was. So, oftentimes you see people hiding behind their extra weight because they don't want to be seen, because that feels vulnerable and scary.
Yes.
And this is getting into deep stuff. This goes back to, childhood and things like that. And this is the work that most people don't do, but this is what will help you with the long-term success. Is if you're just keeping it surface level, you can stick to a deficit for, 12 weeks and you can lose 15 pounds and you can feel good. But nothing has changed inside. And that's the crux of it. So I think the blanket advice would be to be open to where the process takes you and don't shy away from doing that harder inner work, because that's the key.
Why do you think that let's just separate here and talk about women for a second. You hit on a very interesting point of some people want to hide behind the weight. They don't want to be vulnerable. It's maybe they've gotten comfortable with it. What do you think the biggest challenge for women approaching fitness? And then I'll ask you to answer the same question for men that you see in your practice.
That's a great question. I would say one that I see, I'd say is probably pretty common, but certainly in my demographic, is old habits die hard. And we have a lot of cardio bunnies and women who just feel like, but when I was in my 20s, I would just start jogging more and the weight would come off. And even though I keep hearing I should be strength training, even though I keep hearing that the high intensity stuff, may not be great when I'm over 40, it's what I know, it's what I feel like should work. I want it to work, so I'm going to keep doing it. Or even worse, I'm going to keep doing that and I'm going to pile this other stuff on and just run myself into the ground. So I think one of the biggest challenges is, again, it comes down to a mental thing, but coming to terms with needing to approach it differently and being willing to kind of take the chance and make that transition to heavier, more intentional, progressive strength training. Not saying avoid cardio altogether if you enjoy it, but knowing the role that that plays, and also valuing rest, especially over 40, especially in perimenopause. You are just doing yourself a disservice when you're not taking rest days and when you're doing HIIT, 5 days a week and you're crushing it, sure, but you're not seeing the results of it. It can be counterintuitive, but very often the answer is do less, more strategically, and you'll be, pleased with the results.
Mm-hmm. And what about men? Is it the same answer?
Great question. I don't work with.
Before you answer that, do you think it's more societally acceptable for men to be heavier, carry more weight than women?
Excellent question. My knee-jerk reaction is yes.
Okay. Because you'll see beautiful women and they're like, boom, and then you see the husband or the boyfriend, you're like, and men can take off their shirt and have a beer belly and they're proud. Look at me.
Yes.
A woman is more like, I'm going to wear the shawl or,
Exactly. For sure. And I think maybe my guess is that with men, one of the challenges is that it feels hard to acknowledge that you're not where you want to be and that you have to start somewhere that you're not happy with. And I think because men can just sort of get away with, being heavier and embracing it and just kind of, shaking the belly and stuff like that, maybe it feels embarrassing or even like a little emasculating to start working on your fitness or your health.
Yeah. Because
then you're essentially saying, I don't like things the way they are because I want to change them. And then there goes sort of that facade of, I'm just like, the jovial fat guy. So I think that can be exposing. And I think it can be humbling to kind of see where you're starting, especially if you get to the gym and, now there's these younger guys, or, there's even women who maybe are lifting more than you or are fitter than you. And you're just feeling like I'm out of my element and I don't even really need to be doing this because men can get away with it. So my guess is like there's a lot there for men who are trying to get healthier.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the $1 million question, what's the best workout for fat loss?
So ultimately, you can't outrun your fork, and you know that.
Yes.
What I always recommend is 3 days of full body, heavy progressive strength training, roughly 30 minutes. And that's not to say you can't do more or you can't, do body part splits or whatever. But I find that most people who are new to strength training or are, busy and trying to make it a habit, 3 days is reasonable to shoot for. The strength training is not inherently going to burn fat. What it's going to do, though, is help you build or at least retain the muscle that you have while you lose fat through your nutrition. Add to that some daily movement in the form of a reasonable step goal. I'd say like 8,000 plus steps most days. From there, kind of add in whatever you enjoy and have time for. Maybe a HIIT session, maybe a steady state session, maybe some yoga, some Pilates, whatever you like, some boxing, but make the strength and walking the foundation of your movement. And ultimately, if you pair that with a caloric deficit and sufficient protein, that's what's going to help you lose fat, build muscle, look amazing, be strong, have a long health span, etc.
Mhm. So do you have a particular diet that you follow or a particular way of eating? Like, are you protein heavy? Are you carb restricting? What's the secret sauce for Esther's clients?
Great question. So I consider myself diet agnostic, as I wish a lot of health professionals were, because as much as I like to think that most health professionals are well intended and that people are, passionate about a specific diet because it worked for them or because they, really believe in some specific benefits of them, things like that. But what I find is that it's just so dogmatic that this well-intentioned information ends up being taken as dogma. And then you end up with people that I'm sure, we both see all the time who are saying, I've tried everything. And now I don't know what to think because when I did this, carbs were bad. And when I did this, fat was bad. And then I learned it was just about calories, but then I should be fasting also. And there's just so much stuff. And ultimately, the science boils down to calories in, calories out. I know there's arguments to that, but that is what it boils down to. That's not to say it's not impacted by things like hormones, etc. But ultimately, that's why every single diet works, is because you are taking in fewer calories than you're burning. So for that reason, I don't like to dictate what our clients do. I like to help them figure out what works for them.
Mhm.
Generally speaking, I've worked with thousands of clients at this point, and the overwhelming majority have felt best eating a pretty well balanced diet of mostly whole, minimally processed foods with a small percentage just for those foods that they like and enhance their quality of life and make it worth living but aren't necessarily nutritious. So I think that food tracking is a great place to start, to just learn, to understand how are you supposed to get yourself into a deficit if you don't know the first thing about calories or what a portion looks like, or the fact that if you get 96-4 beef or 80-20 beef, your calories are drastically different, even though the burger looks the same. So I think it could be really eye-opening. And then from there, it's up to each client and with the help of me or a coach to then experiment with, do I want to see how I feel if I go lower carb or higher fat, or if I, implement intermittent fasting? Ultimately, all that stuff is just tools that help you get to the root, which is the deficit. So for me personally, I was paleo for years. I tracked macros for a long time. I did intermittent fasting and I don't regret any of those experiences because they have helped me land in a place that I'm really happy with now, which is I have the innate knowledge to put together balanced meals of appropriate size for myself, to be able to hold myself accountable to eating the mostly nutritious foods most of the time and not feeling badly when I, have a donut or eat peanut butter straight from the jar or whatever. And I believe that helping other people find that place of balance for themselves and to know that no one is telling them what rules to follow because they've made these decisions for themselves is ultimately the most empowering and will make them the most successful.
Gotcha. Okay. So then my next question is, who is your ideal client?
Love that question. I work with largely women who remind me of my mom. She struggled with her own weight, and I lost her in my early 20s to colon cancer. And she's a big part of why I got into coaching,
Uh-huh.
is as I started learning more and working with people, I started wondering if she had had someone like me in her life, if she had had a compassionate health professional who wasn't going to belittle her or put her down or make her feel small, was actually going to help her see that she's a worthy and valuable human being, no matter her size, and also approach the weight loss in a way that would have stuck and would have helped her be healthier and happier and more confident? Who knows? So women like that are who I work with now. She was a social worker. She's what I consider like a do-good type person. And typically, when you are a do-gooder, you're on the bottom of the list. So a lot of women that sort of fit that criteria need my help. And that's who I enjoy working with the most because I feel like it's incredibly rewarding. When I was in school, almost all of my classmates wanted to work with athletes. And I was like, screw the athletes. Like they're already doing so well. And it does not interest me at all to tweak something a tiny bit to get another, fraction of a pound or fraction of a second or whatever. I want to do work that feels like it's actually life-changing. And I know that if more women and especially more moms prioritize their own health and felt better about themselves, that's going to have this ripple out effect to their own children, to the rest of their families, to their communities, and not only in the health sense, in that they can help inspire others, but something that the women I talk to say really often is like they just wish they weren't thinking about this stuff all the time, that they weren't thinking about their bodies, about what they should be eating, about their workouts, and what they could do if they freed up that bandwidth for anything else. And I just think it's so cool to think about the potential of if you take, one woman, 5 women, 100 women, 1,000 women, and you free up, 15% of their mental energy from this, and they can apply it to whatever lights them up, a cause, or to devote to their family or their career, or starting a business, or, volunteering, or their faith, or whatever. What kind of impact could that have in the world? And I just think, who better to serve than the people who have the potential to make an impact themselves?
Now, do you train in person or are you primarily online?
It's all online right now. I've gone back and forth. We were living in Germany for the last 3 years,
Oh, wow.
and I didn't speak German, so I wasn't doing anything in person then. Now that we're back in the States, I've been toying with the idea of taking a few in-person clients on, but for the most part, being a military family, being a mom, it makes more sense to do things remotely where we can coordinate schedules and stuff like that. So very mostly online.
I love that. I love that. Typically, when you meet a new client, what is the process? Do they fill out an online form? Do they jump on a Zoom call like this? Or how do you figure out if a person's a fit for your program?
Yeah, great question. I experimented with this a lot. And I have an application. Essentially, you book a consult with me, you fill out a brief application, and you book a call. It's really important to me to have face-to-face time like this with anyone who wants to work with me because it's an important decision.
Sure.
And we both know how much the relationship between the coach and the client impacts the results.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to work with anybody who doesn't feel comfortable with me. And I don't want anyone who doesn't feel comfortable with me to say yes, because I know it's not going to work. You need to feel comfortable being honest, communicating your needs, et cetera. And I want to get a feel for you. And I think it's a good opportunity to ask questions. There's a lot of skepticism or just hesitancy when you feel like you've tried everything before and you just want to know like what's going to make this different, or like how, like I want to do it but like I'm scared it's not going to work. Being able to voice those things and have a conversation about them regardless of what you end up choosing, I think can be really eye-opening. And if you walk away with just some clarity on, you know what, I need a therapist, not you, thank you, or yes, this sounds perfect, let's do it, I think either way it's worth both of our time.
Mm-hmm. Tell everybody about your habit tracker. I think that's really cool that you do that.
Yeah, so this is something I use personally, and I've used with our clients for years, and just recently created it as a freebie because it is the perfect place to start if you are like we've been describing this episode, where you have the starts and stops, and you're kind of all or nothing, and you want to hone in on the stuff I mentioned, eating the protein, taking the walks, doing the strength training, etc. Is having that visual. Not only does it feel good to check the box and say you did it, but it also helps you see kind of at a glance how well am I doing this? How consistently am I showing up? Am I really rock solid Monday through Thursday? And then there's not a smiley face in sight Friday, Saturday, Sunday? Good to know. It can help you identify what's been tripping you up so then you can boost your consistency. So that is available for free to download at esteravant.com/habits.
Mm-hmm. Now, is this a point system or are you actually doing the smiley faces or the sad faces?
I personally just do smiley faces or sad faces. you can do whatever appeals to you. I know some people do, tally marks, check marks. Some people actually get stickers, whatever. But you don't want to make it too complicated. That's the beauty
Sure.
of it, is that it's super simple. You can use a blank calendar if you want. You don't need to do my thing, but it is all out there for you with little boxes and stuff. But ultimately, it's just we're not great at accurately remembering what we do and don't do.
Sure.
And we tend to tell ourselves, like, yeah, I think I do pretty well most of the time. Oh, pretty well most of the time doesn't usually get results. So you need to figure out what is the rest of the time? What's happening there? And
Yeah.
how do I hit that threshold where I actually start to see the payoff, so a tracker can help immensely.
So what's a personal goal and a business goal for the rest of this year?
Oh, that's an excellent question. They are very, it's funny, when you said personal goal, immediately I guess they're so intertwined is the trouble that I'm having. So the biggest goal is I have a book that's being published. I should know publication date in the next, hopefully, couple of weeks. I'm thinking probably late summer, early fall. That's been a huge undertaking, and I'm so pumped that it is actually almost ready for consumption. So that's a huge one. At this point, I've done all the hard work, so it's really just the publisher will tell me and then it'll be out. But holding that book in my hands is going to be one of the biggest accomplishments I've had in a really long time. I also would like to use the book to leverage into public speaking opportunities. So I've been
Absolutely.
attending a local Toastmasters group and
Good.
practicing my public speaking. So getting a paid speaking gig would be a huge business goal and personal as well. The only thing that comes to mind, totally unrelated to business, is my husband and I ran a spontaneous half marathon last weekend. And we've decided we want to do another one that goes like right by our house in November.
Okay.
So my personal goal will be to actually do the training for that because I'd rather just show up and do the thing, but I don't want to pay the price for that. So
Right.
training for that and successfully completing it and beating our time from this most recent one.
All right. Well, let everybody know how they can find you and connect with you and see if you're their candidate maybe for your coaching.
Yeah, thank you so much. You can find out all about me at esteravant.com. And I also have a podcast called Live Diet Free. I do 2 episodes a week. One is I call it bite size because it's like 5 to 10 minutes, like really short, sweet, to the point. Mondays, I do a deep dive on some sort of exercise, nutrition, lifestyle, mindset related topic. So that's a great way to just get exposed to more of me and what I'm like, so that when we do talk on the phone, you feel like you know me already.
Right. Very good. Very good. Okay. Well, thanks for coming on, Esther. It's been a pleasure getting to know a little bit more about your business and what you do. And you dropped some good gems in there. So you have to promise to come back when your book gets done so we could let everybody know. I'm sure it'll be a great read.
Oh my gosh, I would love to. Thank you so much.
Thanks.